Welcome back, y'all. And this is a big show that I really want everybody to tune into because this one's important. He was unarmed, hiding in the closet, and still lost his life. But that's not just a story. That's how Jimmy Atchison died. But we want to know more about Jimmy Atchison and why you haven't heard about this case. And so today is Justice for Jimmy Atchison. Cue the video.
What do you want?
Every headline fades. Every news cycle moves on. For the families, it never ends. And the fight for accountability continues. This is not about clicks. This is not about controversy. This is about the truth. The names that deserves justice. We are reopening and examining the files and the facts. Nothing more and nothing less. We're going to ask questions that people dare to ask. Because justice delayed does not mean justice denied.
Don't shoot!
Don't shoot! Can't fail me.
You don't get
This is Justice for.
What do you want?
Welcome back to Justice for the series, a podcast that dives deep into the cases to get the answers and make sure we get justice for each and every victim. Tonight's episode is about Jimmy Atchison. Jimmy Atchison was a 21-year-old son, father, son of Atlanta, and he was not just a statistic. He was a personality. He was a life. He was an identity before the incident. He had an intense relationship with his family, including Jimmy Hill, who will be with us in a moment. But it's important that we know this case. So we're going to take you back to January of 2019 and talk about what happened to Jimmy Atchison. So, Keandra, back in 2019, did you hear about this case?
So back in 2019, I wasn't as involved in politics and activism, but what I do remember about this case is the way he was criminalized. That's the biggest thing I remember is there wasn't a lot of, for lack of a better term, I guess, sympathy. Usually when we have these kind of cases that we're looking into, there's a widespread outrage and sympathy. Not to say people didn't have outrage, because I believe anytime a Black man loses his life at the hands of the police, there is generally outrage. But I remember there not being a same level of sympathy for Jimmy because of the way I believe it was intentional, the way they criminalized him, the way the story and the narrative was given to us. And then again, me not being in activism back then, only hearing and seeing what I saw on the news, I saw what they tried to convince us was, oh, an officer just doing his job, a federal officer or whoever just doing his job, chasing a criminal. They framed it more like, oh, they got the bad guy than somebody was stripped of their rights.
Yes.
And you were on the ground, right?
Yeah, I was actually on the ground. I got the call the morning after it happened and instantly jumped right into investigative mode and elevating the voice of the family. And because of that, I got to meet Jimmy's father, Jimmy Hill, and we're going to bring him to the stage to kind of give the background into his son and what happened to his son back in January of 2019. And so, Jimmy, can you kind of tell us a little bit about who your son was before this incident?
Thanks for having me. It's so many things. We call him LJ, Little Jimmy. LJ stands for Little Jimmy. Jimmy was a loving father. He loved his children. He was a loving son. He was a loving family member. He was the type of person that he loved to joke around, and you can be mad at him 1 minute, and next thing you know, you be hugging him and laughing with him the next minute. He loved to rap. He just go around, and at the times when I was over his mother's house and his grandmother's house, he'd wake up in the morning, he'd be beating on the wall and rapping and like, boy, if you don't stop beating on that wall, but he loved to rap. He loved to rap. He loved to sing. He was just that type of person. He loved to cook. I mean, you can't tell him he couldn't cook. Even his grandmother was famous for making homemade biscuits. And some days he'll wake up in the morning and just cook breakfast. Sometimes family members spend the night in Lord's house, and we wake up in the morning, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, he had breakfast for the whole family. And he was just that type of person. He would easily get along with you. He wasn't the type to look down upon people. If he gonna look down, he wanted to look down and pick somebody up. And my side of the family, his mother, his great grandmother, and his grandmother, his side of the family, that we always have fed the less fortunate. I'm not gonna call them home. We're gonna say less fortunate. And that's what we did. He spent a lot of time doing that. He just loved to see people getting along. He loved to smile. He loved to laugh, and he carried a Bible with him, a little small Bible with him. He used to read every day. And I used to always say, man, how you squeezing your eyes up, seeing them little words? But he read it every day. No matter where he went, it stayed in his back pocket. And I noticed something. I was like, the day that he was murdered, that was the only day he didn't have that in the Bible. That was the Bible, Proverbs and Psalms and different books. But as far as him, we really been missing. We really been missing because he's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and he comes from a very close family. Talk about his sisters and his mother and the impact that this incident had on them.
Jimmy on his side of the family, and besides my other kids from different mothers, they were very close. And but his mother's side, they were like a very close-knitted family. A lot of love, being able to agree to disagree at times, and they still show love. And his sister protected him. He had 7 sisters by his mother, and they protected him. And they might say, you get on my nerve, but here I love you. But they were very close-knitted. They were the type of family. One couldn't go to the bathroom without the other one knowing, and that's how close-knitted they were. And this has really put a strain. His death has really his murder has really put a strain on the family, because I still have my daughters, and I think the last time was like about 4 months ago, where they used to call me 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. The grieving process, and because there's no time to take when it comes to grieving, and even though it's been over 6 years, 5.5, 6 years, and now it's 7 years, and working into the 8th year. I always have to talk to them. They want to take drives at 1 or 2 in the morning because they were upset and crying. And I always have to just talk to them. And they tell them, look, call me anytime, no matter what. I just don't want you to be riding out there this time of night and taking a walk this time of night. This death, people don't understand what it does to the family. The people, you can talk about everything, but what it does to the family. Jimmy's death loss. His mother Cynthia died April. Now she died in May of 22, and she died from a broken heart. And we can sometimes be doing interviews, and she'll get up right in the middle of the interview and just say, I couldn't take it. He just. It really just tore her up, and she let us know it was tearing up. We didn't know it had tore up to the point where she went into that dark place and could never come back out of it. And it not only just affected his mother, like I said, it was a close family, but his grandmother, Elizabeth Atchison, she died several months behind that, and then his uncle, Tim Atchison. Rest in peace, all of them. All of them, because that's how it affected. I remember his grandmother was like, Cynthia had him, but his mother named Cynthia had him, but he was his grandmama's side. And y'all know how grandmama is about their grandchildren, especially the boys. And I remember she told me and Tammy's aunt that's been out here with us. We've been out here fighting together. And I remember she looked both of us in the eye and she said, y'all get justice for my boy. But I used to go back there in the room sometime, and I go there and see her just break down. He would talk to me, break down, and say, this officer had no right to take his life. So it's not only this affected his mother, his grandmother, his uncle to the point where they passed away, but it's affected, and then not only this affected his sisters, well, on his side of the family and my side of the family, but it also affected his family as a whole, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins. I mean, this was a death that everybody had. Everybody that we really felt that. They still feeling it today.
Tell us about, because Jimmy was very well known in Southwest Atlanta. Tell us about the impact to that community after they found out what happened to Jimmy.
People was upset. People were angry because he was well known in Southwest Atlanta, and he was well known, and he was well respected. He carried himself in a manner to where he gave respect, but he also commanded respect. And he was just the type of person he didn't try to tell clothes. You know, that's why we would tell him when he went and got his license. We just, just wanted to do things to make sure he didn't get involved with wrongdoings on the street. You know, and I had always spoke to him. You know, I lost another son, the gun violence, community gun violence occurred in Jordan in 2012 at age 18. I used to always tell my son, and then I said, let me tell you something. Don't never run from police. Because when you run from law enforcement, because I had an incident in 1985, Operation Oatmeal, Atlanta, where they took my life, where they took my life where I couldn't breathe. And I remember from the incident, and I said, don't never run from police, because if you run, they're going to make you pay. They're going to make you pay. Whether you're innocent or you get, they're going to make you pay. And unfortunately, this happened to be one of those episodes, because I know he was scared. He didn't run because he did nothing. He ran because he was afraid. He was afraid of police. And the community, like I said, the community was they were outraged. They were outraged. You can see from the people that attended his homegoing celebration, and they were just outraged. And they were just frustrated, outraged. And the apartment where he got killed that was at the Temple, that was right above the C.T. Martin Recreation Center. And people stayed upset. People still upset. We still talk about it.
Yeah. And let's kind of shift, and I know Keandra has some questions, but let's shift to the actual incident and what happened. So this happened back on January the 22nd of 2019, as you said, in the Allen Temple apartment complex, which is right there on Martin Luther King in the heart of Southwest Atlanta. Kind of tell us what you learned happened to cause him to come into contact with the Atlanta Police Department and the federal task force.
This young lady was selling some clothes, selling some pants, and she was a lesbian. And sometimes our lesbians have a habit of hanging around with. I don't have no problem with it because I'm my family, but how they have a habit of hanging around with guys. And what happened?
Masculine.
Yeah, and what happened was some guys over in the area where he went to the studio at, they robbed. They took a pocketbook and they took everything. And my son went up they threw a pocketbook on the roof, and my son Jimmy went and got a pocketbook off the roof. And then several days later, she came back with some more clothes. And so my son, like I say, he already had his license book when he was, selling clothes and stuff. He had peddling license, And so, from my understanding, is she allowed him to use the phone. She unlocked the phone, allowed him to use the phone. And it's a store right down the street, right by the C.T. Martin Recreation Center. And he walked off, and he never did come back. So she waited 3 days later, and she said that she gonna make him pay. And she was already upset with him because she felt like he knew who had did that to her. Who had robbed her the first time, and she was already upset. And I'm gonna get in people's business like that. I come over here and go to the studio. Sometimes I hang out and go back home. And so so 3 days later, she went and took out a warrant saying he robbed her with a gun, even though she unlocked her phone and gave him the phone. There wasn't no tussle, wasn't no argument. She expected him to come back, and he didn't come back. And 3 days later, she went and took out a warrant. And saying that he brought her at gunpoint, and which was a lie, because you'll see her best friend that brought over here, you'll see on a lot of different reports, interviews with News, Channel 11, Channel 2, and different reports where she's saying that I wish I would have never brought her around. She would out to get somebody, but it was the wrong person. And it seems like Atlanta police continue to ignore that, and they ignored that, and that's what happened. So, and I want to add this, that the officer that murdered my son Kim, 26-year veteran with a troubled history, when they came to the house, Jimmy's grandmother's house looking for him, and they said they didn't have no warrant, but they said they were looking for him because he missed court. And they put Cynthia out, his mother out, and they put out about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning in a bare feet. And my daughter Destiny, Jimmy's sister, and they wanted to put the grandmother out, but she couldn't walk. So she told me she's not going anywhere. And Jimmy was nowhere around. So they say he missed court. They wouldn't tell him she missed court. And like I said, this type of crime, they scared of police. They don't, they don't deal with police because they're growing up on the West Side. They don't see what are happening in the case with a lot of police. So she told him that Jimmy was, I'm sure she told him that Jimmy was probably about 20 minutes away. So what they did was Son Kim, and they said he was already acting very nasty, certain how just acting with a nasty attitude. Now this officer that shot Jimmy. And so Son Kim, they went back some kind of way. They went back to the judge and told the judge that my son was a flight risk, which was a lie. And that's how it got to be a federal. That's what brought the federal task force in. They said he was
just about to ask you that.
Yeah, they said he was a flight risk, and even though she had just told him that he was right over there, and that he didn't know nobody out of town, and that he wasn't going nowhere, and that she was finna get him up to the ground, told him she finna get him to turn himself in because he had missed court. And that they say he missed court. That was a lie though, because the mayor come to her house, all the letters come to her house, and they take mayor serious, and then the mayor never did, a letter never did. So they went and told a lie. And I said to myself, well, this is how they do a lot of young black guys on these federal task force cases. They go lie saying they're
flight risk.
Flight risk, because, when you think about it, when you're saying a flight risk, then you think about FBI, then you think about wanted most dangerous, then you crossing state lines. So, and you can have a simple case and it can be, and they lie like that, and they hear you if you want to cross the state line, so the FBI gonna get involved. That's how it turned into a federal task force case.
And so once it turned into a federal task force case, what happened after that?
After that, they had called and told Jimmy that the police that came and be by there. So he said, well, I'm gonna go turn myself in tomorrow. And we really trying to find out what was going on. We didn't think it was that serious at first. We didn't know nothing about the girl had took out a warrant. We didn't know nothing. So we just thought it was just and then we end up, and that's when I got the call from Cynthia. That next day, he didn't get a chance, because that next day, early in the morning, I got a call. She told me, Jimmy, the police they got ALJ surrounded. We called him Jimmy. Police got him surrounded. I said, well, y'all at? She said, Allen Temple. And I said, well, at least I ain't doing nothing to him. And then she said, Jimmy, they don't shot him. She was hysterical on the phone. I was on the east side of town where I stayed, and so I was like, well, as long as they don't kill him. And then she called me back 3 minutes later, screaming, and said, he dead. She said, they don't kill him. And that's when I went over, I got away and went over there, and they had everything blocked off, because when you're going up Allen Temple, it's a hill, and you had to go through a guard gate, and they wouldn't let us nowhere near. And that's how it started.
Okay. And so when he was over in Allen Temple, and to my understanding, he was at his girlfriend's house. Is that correct?
One of his children's mother's house.
Yeah, one of the children's mother. And the federal task force was trying to arrest him. And then he jumped from the second floor window and ran over to the Candy Lady's house, and was in the Candy Lady's house when Son Kim and the federal task force breached the Candy Lady's house and ultimately surrounded him in the closet and shot him in his face as he was surrendering. How did you come to learn those facts?
I can't. That's when I talked to you. When I had talked to you, whose house he was in, because they understand. They know he was unarmed. They was unarmed because he jumped out the window in his boxers. He was in his boxers, no shirt, no nothing, just his boxers. And so they knew he was unarmed. And then one of the officers fell trying to chase him, and I'm quite sure we were trying to figure out what that son Kim who fell because and when he ran in the house and when the officers came in the first place, when the officers were kicking the door, and he pushed the children under the bed. He pushed the children under the bed. He wanted them out the way, and that's when he went out the one. And so then when they went on in the house, and I so much I found out during going to federal trial how this officer, even the judge mentioned how this officer sit here and ask the judge asked the officer, said, why were you in the hallway? And why didn't you let the officer and the other officer go in there and check on Jimmy if the other officer had a shield? Why would you go in now and yourself, risking yourself, your life, and another officer right beside you where they had a shield? And it just so much and so much inconsistency. This case has been a miscarriage of justice from the beginning to the end. And to hear this officer get up on the stand and say, I don't know whether I said breathe, don't move, or what I said show your hand. And then when they had the 4 officers that testified that was right in the room with him. Remember now, he was surrounded by 4 officers with guns drawn. And this officer said he felt for his life. Wasn't no radio, no gun, or nothing. If this officer felt for his life, why didn't the other 3 officers feel for his life? He would have had more bullet holes in him, and excuse my expression, than Jamarian Robinson. They would have lit him up. And they said because Jimmy, in the report from the public integrity unit, they said because my son wasn't a threat. He was not a threat. This officer was a 26-year veteran with a troubled history. He shot at approaching Rottweiler. This according to a report from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Christian Boone, he shot at approaching Rottweiler 8 times while approaching officers, while officers right there within the vicinity and right there by him after he had been commanded to stop. And officer got hit by bits of sharpener, and they filed complaints against him. And then one time he entered a funeral home looking for a suspect. They didn't identify themselves, and they put guns in everybody's faces. And and that's the report. That's not me saying it. That's a report coming from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that did an investigation on this officer.
Yeah, and to be clear, you were talking about a report done by the AJC on Officer Sun Kim, and then you were also making reference to the binder that was collected by the Public Integrity Unit of the District Attorney's Office prior to charges being filed. So there's a lot of information to unpack about that officer, but let's kind of focus it back to how Jimmy got into the closet and what the later investigation showed that happened to Jimmy as he was exiting the closet. So based on what you learned from the investigation and what we also learned, it was determined that Jimmy was unarmed, right?
Yes.
And he was given 2 commands at the same time.
Yeah. Freeze and
come
show
out.
Your hands.
Yeah, show your hands. And then he was shot 1 time under his eye by Sun Kim as he was coming out of the closet to show his hands and surrender.
Yes, as he was raising his hand, according to the ref in the courtroom with the federal case, he was raising his hand after he was told, because he was told to complete the command. Like I said, no radio, no gun, no cell phones or nothing. And Sun Kim shot him 1 time below the eye. And during when you hear testimony and how this officer said, so let me get this straight about the closet. It wasn't just a open door closet. It was one of those little aluminum sliding closets.
I was wondering that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a slide door closet. And my son back, he was bent like he was laid like this. He was laid like this back, and the closet was so small to where he couldn't lay straight. And so his back was folded up like that, and it ain't like he had a mountain of clothes on him. He had just a few pieces of clothing trying to cover itself. And like I said, it was a slide door closet, and the closet was already open. And so the thing got here, Storm Kim, when we doing federal court, he said something that tore me up because I was in the hospital. I missed the first court day because I was in the hospital. I was fighting. I had prostate surgery and they cut my bladder by mistake, and I had a lot of blood clots. I was fighting for my life, and it bothered me that I couldn't be there. And to hear this man say, well, in the first place, they went up there a military style, like they were looking for Bin Laden or somebody.
Okay.
That was in
I've been thinking that.
Yeah, they went up there 7, 8 o'clock in the morning with assault rifles and everything. They went there like they were really looking for a mass murder or somebody, and I noticed they do that to intimidate the community and put fear in the community. But and to hear this officer get on the stand and say he didn't know that was my son up under them clothes. All he saw, and it's word for word, what this officer said on the stand. He said all the thing he saw was a white eyeball.
And you was just gonna shoot it blindly?
Said,
what if it had been a child?
That's what I say. I said, so that just show you the valuation of Black life and how they think about it. Because this was that word on the stand in federal court. He said, I saw a white eyeball. I didn't know that was Jimmy up under there. And he's like, there was another lie because he had went in there from the beginning and he pulled some clothing off of Jimmy. And then he went back out in the hall and told the other officer, like, Jimmy's in there. And then he come back and said, he didn't know that was my son. So I was like, well, damn, suppose that would have been a 7 or 8-year-old child, a white eyeball. And so he just gonna shoot anyway. But he knew it was my son. He knew it was Jimmy under there. He just lied all through there. He just wanted to take it
like a lie.
Yeah, he just wanted to take it light. And he did.
So after this shooting, what happened after that? Because we know that there was no body cam footage because at that point Atlanta could not wear body cams on the federal task force. So the hours after the shooting, what happened?
Well, the hours after the shooting, after I reached out to Tanya and Tanya Miller, and she reached out to you, and we were trying to see how we were gonna plan. We couldn't get no answers. We were calling, we were trying to get answers. We were going downtown, we couldn't get an answer, and that's when we reached out to you and Tanya, and that's when y'all came in because we were lost. We were lost. My son had just lost his life. We didn't know what was behind, what the reason was behind it, and we just wanted answers. We wanted answers, and by me knowing that, I knew that we had to do something real quick. Mm-hmm. We couldn't wait. We couldn't wait on. We couldn't afford to wait. That's why I went ahead on and reached out to you and Tanya.
And by couldn't get answers, who were you trying to get answers from prior to you reaching out to Tanya Miller, who was the attorney that you hired, and the NAACP, which I was an investigator and ultimately president at one point? Who were you reaching out to?
The first person we tried to reach out to was the mayor's office.
And by the mayor, who was the mayor at this time in 2019?
Keisha Roberts.
And did you also reach out to the chief of police at that time?
Yes, Eric Pacia. We tried to reach out to the police department, Chief Eric Pacia, and we were just being ignored.
And let's back that up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I want us to take some time on that because I hear a familiar name, right? So I want us to really take a little bit of time on that because you said you reached out to the mayor's office and you couldn't get answers. So I want you to walk me through a little bit like what you were asking, what you were reaching out, expecting them to do, what your expectations are, what your ask was, because there are a lot of people I've learned who are confused on what the role of these leaders are. The mayor can absolutely do something in this situation. In your son's situation, the mayor could have done something. You definitely shouldn't have gotten radio silence from her. So I want, if you can recall, like just tell us what were you asking of the mayor, or what sort of questions were you posing that you didn't get an answer to?
Yeah, we were at first time we were asking for a sit-down meeting We wanted to meet. We wanted to meet so we could then try to find out, get some type of accountability.
She didn't even meet with you.
We want. No, she didn't meet. What we wanted to find. She met with us. I'm not sure you want me to get this early into this. She met with us.
No, go ahead.
Okay, she met with us.
Let's kind of walk through it. Now, initially, she didn't meet with you,
Right.
and then something happened. So go ahead.
Okay, so she met with us after. It was the day before a town hall meet. But she had scheduled a town hall with at the CT Martin Recreation Center and the citizens in Buckhead. And so she changed it. She canceled the one at CT Martin Recreation Center. That took her out of it. And then that's when she came back and when she was talking about fixing potholes in Cascade and Buckhead. And because she knowing that she, the next meeting that when she planned that was going to be at Cascade Methodist Church. And you know, that's a respectable church with a lot of the air there and a respectable neighborhood. And so that's what she ended up setting the meeting up at right there, when she had over 40, 50 officers waiting on her. Even though everything we done was peaceful. That peaceful protest. And then you didn't see it, but you didn't have that many officers when you went to Buckhead and they called you everything but the child of God. And so when we went there and we interrupted the meeting. You know, we went hollering just for Jimmy and we interrupted when Chief Sears was speaking, we interrupted the meeting. You know, we just went to chat my son's name and a lot of people at the Methodist church at the town hall, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't even know my son had been murdered. And then after they started standing up, clapping, a lot of elder people say, y'all keep fighting. Y'all keep fighting. And that's when she came and said that, I met with the family, but she didn't meet with us. What happened was we were scheduled for a meeting with Chief Sears, and Chief Sears, this meeting was scheduled a day before the town hall meeting now, after 2 months. But this meeting was scheduled a day before the town hall meeting with Chief Sears. And all of a sudden, Keisha Bottom pop up and say, at Four Seasons Hotel, and Keisha Bottom pop up and say, a reason why she had met with us because she don't really like being in the spotlight. And I was like, she said that the reason why she had met with us because she don't like being in the spotlight. And that's when I asked her, I was like, well, you know, I mean, I've been seeing her in so much of the spotlight. And she said the reason why she met with us because she had read a letter from my other son, my only son I had left, Jimmy Hill, and the third. And she said that and she felt his pain, and that's why she met with us. And we know it was a bunch of bull because now you want to meet with us a day before a town hall meeting because you know we were coming. But we always have been. We always know we never have had no violence. We don't have many protests. We never had no violence or nothing like that because one thing about Griggs out there, he's going to make sure that we get our point across, but he'll let us know, you know, if we were going outside because he didn't know outside the guidelines because, and that's what happened. And she had, and they escorted us off the campus, but we still stayed on the corner for a while. So, you know, that's just another excuse. You know, this man, he placed a dark cloud on my son's case from the beginning. And I have to tell you this because I have to tell you this because this is important. And this let me know that I said to myself, I didn't say it in these words, but I said some more harsh words. But I was like, oh yeah, we got to fight because we did a counter like for my son at City Hall. I'm gonna get my son got killed about 10 days before the Super Bowl that was here in Atlanta. Played here in Atlanta, they wanted to sweep it on the road. And we did a counter light at City Hall, and we went around the front. We went around the front side, and a lot of people were coming in, and they were asking us because a lot of people was in town. I think they were having the Super Bowl, what they call a Super Bowl party or whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were saying, "Coming on there, who is Jimmy Atchison? What happened to Jimmy Atchison?" A lot of the people from out of town, and we out there. We ain't barring nobody. We ain't blocking the sidewalk. It's about 40 of us, and as soon as you come out of City Hall, when you go to the left, we were right in that section. And she said, and all of a sudden we see police come out there with the fences. And they put the fences around us. And then they start coming out there and they started intimidating, standing behind the fences with cameras and everything. And so next thing you know, we see 20 police riding up the street on bicycle across the street. And they parked right there. And then some more police came out and they brought the fences in closer. And the more police came out, they were just staring at us like they were waiting on us to do something. They just really they were trying to instigate something. And then more people started coming from inside the party, out of City Hall, and they, even police, they weren't being there. They were just talking to us, and they're saying, "No, more police came out there with cameras, taking pictures, and more police came." And she brought the fence even closer, and knowing that we had children out there with us, and I was saying to myself, "Excuse my friend, I just said this lady dangerous," and so knowing we had children out there. And knowing, and we had probably about 10 smaller children, and they brought the fences even in closer. And it's to the point where we were getting so crowded where we couldn't move. I mean, we could move a little bit, but we weren't that much space. And that's when Greg said, "Y'all, come on, let's cut this out. It's getting too dangerous." And I don't think we were Hollywood just with them and just talking to people. And that's when I knew it in. I said, "Yeah, this lady is something else."
So what I'm hearing is strategy. First of all, lack of empathy. At what point is she acknowledging, at the very least, acknowledging what your family's going through, which is a basic, decent human behavior to have, right? When somebody lost somebody, whether you feel like you're at fault or not, I didn't hear anywhere in there where you said she expressed empathy. What I heard was political strategy. That's what I heard. I heard positioning when it came to the meeting. I heard the reason for the meeting being political strategy because it's close to some sort of appearance that she's doing, despite the fact that she's a mayor that doesn't like to be in the spotlight. And I'm also hearing a lot of vanity. That's what I'm hearing, because I'm hearing we're fixing potholes before fixing the holes the police are putting in black men.
I mean, you said
crazy,
something.
But priorities.
You said something. You said something. Yeah, and it's in the paper. It's in the paper out on the news. Where she's talking about, and everything you just said is true. She's talking about fixing potholes. You want to fix potholes that butter the people up in on Cascade Road, and then that's when she said, "Okay, this is where we're gonna meet at." And it was a lot of political strategy. It was a lot of political strategy involved, and we've seen it, and we know it, and we've seen it. Me and Greg talked about it a lot, and we've seen it. And she just kept on, and she just kept on, and she just ignored us. She just ignored us, and it wasn't no compassion. It wasn't nothing from it. It wasn't that. It's like, okay, I'm finna play these political games with these people because they on this checkerboard, I'm on this chessboard, and I'm finna continue on like we didn't really know what was going on, but we were seeing it. We were seeing it before it was coming. We were seeing her next move. Before she, and I was like, and so I had talked to her, and I said, "I don't understand you being a black woman, knowing what this about. When your nephew got killed, you tore up the whole city of Atlanta looking for his killers, even though he got killed by a gang. She tore the whole city up. They went door to door. They were just tearing up everything until they found the killer. So you don't think that you don't think we want no type of accountability? You want accountability. You got accountability. You brought pressure. So I guess we didn't make no difference. Yeah.
And so I want to hop in here for a minute and just kind of set the stage a little bit more. After Jimmy was killed on January 22nd, 2019, we reached out to the mayor's office multiple times. And when we got wind that she was coming to the C.T. Martin Recreation Center for a community engagement to talk about potholes, we made it clear that the community was coming to talk about Jimmy. And that's when they canceled the appearance there and rescheduled it for the meeting at the Cascade Methodist Church. In between that, they set a meeting for Chief Shields with the family and the attorneys and the NAACP. And that's when Mayor Bottoms came to that meeting, where we specifically asked her to address what's happened to Jimmy Atchison. And she did not address what happened with Jimmy Atchison. And thus we came to the Cascade United Methodist Church and shut down the event. That was the first time publicly the mayor and the police chief said the name Jimmy Atchison ever. And so from that point to now, we've still been trying to galvanize people to understand that Atlanta has a police brutality problem. And right before the Olympics, a man was gunned down in the heart of Southwest Atlanta, which, if anybody knows anything about Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta is the cradle of the civil rights movement. That's where it came from. And to be killed on MLK in Allen Temple and the political elite in Atlanta go quiet was a very serious black eye to the city. But what Jimmy hadn't told you is that they continued to protest for years upon years upon years, and subsequent mayors actually met with the family and tried to address the issue. And ultimately, the district attorney addressed the issue after more pressure from Jimmy and his family, and got that indictment that we were talking about that ended up in federal court. So I just want to kind of paint the picture for everybody. But the issue was Keisha Lance Bottoms did not want to address the police brutality problem in Atlanta under her watch. And Jimmy Hill and his family warned Keisha before Deatrick Griffin and before Rayshard Brooks and before the Morehouse and Spelman student and before what happened in Centennial Olympic Park after George and Rayshard, and then the Wendy's. And so what we want to make sure people understand on this podcast is justice for the series is to elevate voices like Jimmy Atchison, who could have stopped Rayshard Brooks and Deatrick Griffin and all these other cases that have happened, Jimmy Holloman, Deacon Jimmy Holloman, and then the newest case, Mr. Linton Blackwell, that Jimmy was just talking about at City Hall. So Atlanta has a real bad problem, but we kind of want to shift back to the accountability or lack thereof by Keisha Lance Bottoms and Erica Shields. So after we disrupted their town hall, did they at that point reach out to the family and work on helping to get justice for Jimmy?
No, she just totally ignored us, and we just, and sometimes I was out there in front of Fulton County District Attorney planning with his office, like sometimes 3-4 times a week, and because I was like, these folks think they responding, and they ain't gonna move the pressure, and people were still putting pressure to the point where she had to make a choice: let it fire this officer, or let this officer resign. And what happened was she allowed this officer after much pressure, from our family and from the community and from Griggs and everybody, from activists and advocates, they were really out there then, that to the point where she allowed him to, she gave him the easy way out. She allowed him to resign to still get a paycheck instead of firing him, knowing full well she knew what really happened to my son. She knew that it was wrong, what happened to my son. That it was unjustified, and yet still she allowed this officer to resign, and knowing how devastated for our family was going to be. And we never have asked for nothing special. We just asked you to just do the right thing, stand up. And evidently it was too hard for her to do the right thing when it came to my son, Jimmy Atchison.
So I want to make sure that we're also taking some time to have the conversation about now, right? Because I'm listening, and obviously there's a lot of stuff for us to unpack about, what happened, because it's important. So not to say it's not important because it's leading us up to the now, but I also want to make sure we're intentional about talking about the now, because this is not past tense. This problem that we're talking about, the police brutality, that's not past tense. But also this same person who dropped the ball in your son's case is now running for governor. So here we have, I heard you say, Griggs, we have a police brutality problem. What I hear in this story is we have a leadership problem in that case. Yeah. That's what I heard, whether it's leadership on the police force or leadership in these elected offices. That's what that sounds like to me. And she is now going up for a position of even more power, never having addressed any of this, right? So that's where I want to make sure that we're holding people accountable in the now, because this same person she is still in politics, right? She didn't just step away after all this happened. She's still in politics. And in fact, she is vying now for more power as governor. And I cannot express how dangerous that would be to have a governor who behaves this way, which is why I personally have like called it out on social media. This is a conversation that I've been having on social media, is calling her out because it's unacceptable, and it's not, I'm not gonna lie and say that it's not a regular behavior for me to call out politicians. That's sort of what I do. But this one to me feels personal, because not just because it impacts me, but to me, it's the audacity. It's this, like you said, it's this elite attitude, like I'm above dealing with the pain and stress that this family has gone through. And I don't like that. And I feel like these politicians need to be reminded that they work for us, that they represent us, that they have a job to do. And that's why I'm intentional about saying, hey, even though she was a mayor, there was a lot she could have done. She wasn't on the police force, but there's a lot she could have done. And she failed to do her job. So now, not only did she fail to do that job, she's now asking for a promotion.
Absolutely.
And I think that and and I was just telling somebody, if it was up to her, and I would have voted Democrat, and I was saying if it was up to her, and the worst possible a Republican that was running for office, I couldn't give her my vote, knowing what she done did, being a living witness about what she would do. I would rather just fight against this racist Republican than just give my vote. And I, not just because she's black, but it taught me that all skin folks ain't necessarily kin folks. And this is like, fair. Yeah, and because she caused a lot of pain to my family. She caused a lot of pain to my family when she could have made wrong is wrong, no matter who says it or who does it. And she's been wrong in every aspect of how she continued to play these political games with myself and my family. And it just so much when you look at the things with Atlanta Police Department, the things that they've been through, and from Katherine Johnson to my son Jimmy Atchison, Atlanta Police ain't nobody been held accountable. They let that young lady get away. They wouldn't bring her to court, and they knowing she lied. She lied. They allowed Atlanta Police Department. They failed to do a follow-up report that was written on paper between the witness and the accused because they sloppiness, laziness, and carelessness. This happened. If they would have did a follow-up report, maybe that could have saved my son, because they would have known that she was lying. But they didn't do it. They had it written down on paper, but they didn't do a follow-up report. So it just so many
thorough investigation.
Yeah, so it's and that's what they supposed to do. And it's like even in Katherine Johnson case with the box drug raid. Even with my son, my cousin Linton Blackwell shot 17 times in the back. If they would have did a psychological evaluation on this officer, they would have known he shouldn't have been doing do the work. So it's just like nobody's being held accountable. And why and no matter, and we're at every level of the government, and the billings, the beatings, the killings, they continue on. The violation of rights by black people continue on. And it's like nobody cares. It's like, and like I tell the family, sometimes it seems like we out there on the island by ourselves, besides the few people that do care, the few people that do stand with us.
And one thing I wanted to bring up to echo everything that's been said is that we also remember, and I got into kind of a back and forth on Twitter with one of her advisors because of these comments, where he was trying to justify, but she put body cams on members of the federal task force, or removed the police officers from the federal task force until they had body cams. And I had to remind that individual, and I would remind her, that that's because you didn't have body cams that cost somebody their life. You don't get credit for doing something after there's a problem and then still not addressing the problem. Because my next question to him was, has the family been made whole in this entire conversation? And the answer is no. And there's still no accountability in this conversation. You know, Chief Shields has gone on to be the police chief in Louisville and failed to implement the consent decree after Breonna Taylor, and now is in Buffalo becoming the new police chief there. Mayor Bottoms is now running for governor and not addressing the issues that she left in Atlanta. We can all talk about the fact that she was a one-term mayor who could not deal with the pressure of what it is to run the jewel of the South, had all of the unrest because of police brutality, and still's not addressing the police brutality. And even more, she was an advisor to the Biden White House, who during the biggest protest in American history could not pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, nor sign an executive order addressing the issue that caused millions of people to be outside, which was police accountability and police violence. And so when we having this conversation, we got to have a full-throated evaluation of a person who wants to have higher leadership. And so what angers me the most is a lot of people that I respect on social media who don't live in Atlanta are having a conversation about Atlanta without talking to the folks who live through it. And so that's why I wanted to give Jimmy the stage and the platform to have this conversation directly. It's not Gerald Griggs talking. It's not Keandra talking. It's the person that's been affected and his family that's talking that has been left out.
Mm.
Yeah, and I want to add, and what really hurts to add to that, when during the George Floyd situation, and when I seen Keisha Bottom get on a CNN, do interviews and talk about and my prayers go out to the family of George Floyd, and you saying how that was a disgrace, and how the black man, the right to live life should apply. And these were her words. This is where I got this from. This is where I get this statement right here from. The right to live life should apply to all black men, whether on the street corners or in the classrooms, in the workplace. Everybody should have the right to live their lives free up here, and everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. Those were Keisha Bottom's exact words. That's where I got that from. And yet it's still, what about my son Jim Atchison? What about all these people that done got killed in your backyard? And you've been silent. You won't say nothing. You won't say nothing. And like I say, that's where I got that quote from, and I used it so much. And yet it's still, but what about that? The right to live life when it came to my son Jim Atchison. I mean, you ignored us. You did everything. You played games with us. You did everything possible to help sweep this case on the road. And when I talk about Atlanta Police Department, when it comes to proper protocol and procedures, just seem like they don't give a damn. Like it's ignored, because. And I have to say that 22 days later, after my son Jim Atchison was murdered, a white dentist in Brookhaven had a 10-hour standoff, 25 minutes away from where my son got killed, had a 10-hour standoff with police, but shooting at his girlfriend. They gave him 10 whole hours. They didn't give my son 10 minutes. 10 whole hours. They pop procedure. They called SWAT. Then flashbang, sit in tear gas, sent in a robot. Then SWAT entered. It was a tough. He was in a small room like my son, a room full of guns, and they brought him out without a scratch. But when he came to my son Jim Atchison, they didn't give him 10 minutes. They brought him out. They brought him out. They brought him out in a body bag. And so that's why a lot of people, they say police need better training. And I say it's what's in the heart, because if police had the same training when dealing with white people, just that the level of brutality and violence isn't the same. It's about lack of accountability.
That's a good point.
That's what it continues to be about.
And bias. bias, even if it's unconscious bias, and racism, a lot of racism. And I think that there are too many people who are afraid to address it. And you mentioned earlier about voting, how you said you would literally pick a Republican before voting for her. Do y'all know how deep it has to be for a black man to sit here and say, I would rather fight the racist white people than to pick that snaky ass black woman? And I felt that when you said that. I understand it. I
And
understand it.
yeah, especially after knowing I'm right here. I'm seeing what she ain't nobody telling me. I'm right here. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing how this affected how what this had done to my family. I've seen Cynthia Atchison when I had to when they called and told me she was gone and I had to see her laying in the floor, wasn't breathing no more. And then their grandmother and how her head just snapped back and she just it's like they were just giving up. People don't understand what this does to the family. How she, and even their uncle how they just when he got took away, they took away life. They took away the heart of the family. They just took away, you know, the grandmama is the engine, but they took away a very key part of the family, and it destroyed the family. And that's why I continue to fight now. I've joined the even in Decatur now with Decatur high school students. You know, they played a part in helping getting the Confederate statue tore down with John Lewis. It's now in the heart of Decatur, and a racist middle school that I went to called D. Renfro to Beacon Hill. So now to keep my son's name alive, I'm going wherever I got to go and do what I got to do. And now they allowed me to be a member of that to keep his name alive in the Beacon Hill community. So I just have to because I feel less than a man. I feel less than a man. I feel less than a father figure if I can't do something. You know, as long as I got breath in my body, and which brings me to this point. Even though this officer, a Trump appointed judge, federal judge in 2018, even though this officer dismissed this charge, Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis had a chance to appeal this case to the 11th Circuit Appellate Court, but she refused to do so because, and I always have heard that Fannie had been very vindictive in certain things, but you know what? Because I think because she had a problem or situation with my sister-in-law, Tammy Featherstone, in which when she was running for office, and Tammy was suing Paul Howard. And I think Fannie remembered that. And she, you know, we had, and I have to say this right here, we had, we wasn't properly represented in court, in federal court, because this man, Brian, what his name? Brian, I can't think his last name. He was a representation, representative of Fulton County District Attorney Office. This man brought 4 officers in and as witnesses for us. He brought 4 officers in, and these officers said that Sean Kim was part of a federal task force. They agreed that Sean Kim. So why would you even bring them in? Why would you even bring them in if they're gonna say that? That hurt us. Why would you even have them? You know, and miss opportunities. We were misrepresented. We weren't represented at all. We were miss. It's like a lot of things he just let get by. Like he was afraid. And I know we had a conversation. He told me, "So well, I don't want to make the judge mad. I don't give a damn about making the judge mad. I said, I know you just have to do what you have to do, man. And by you being timid and afraid to really go for the jugular, because that's exactly what they're doing for you. They doing it to it. It's like we were just." You know, I was just lost. I was lost in court. I was upset. I was on edge doing court. I was already upset about being able to see this officer for the first time. Officer with Bill, a stocky Bill about 6'4". And I'm like, man, he could have just snatched my son. Could have snatched him out of the closet.
So
I did just want to add that. What you going to say now?
I was just gonna ask you, so where's the case now? Like, what's the most recent update in your fight for justice? What's the status now?
But I have to be talking to Griggs about it. It had got dismissed, and we had 30 days to appeal it. And Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, she refused to appeal it.
I remember talking about this on social media.
Yeah. So what happened was the case was so the district attorney's office indicted the case, and then Sung Kim, through his lawyers, filed a motion to remove it from state court and have it in federal court. It was removed from state court to federal court. Then they filed a motion to dismiss. The judge granted the motion to dismiss, and the district attorney's office did not appeal it to the 11th Circuit. So effectively, the criminal charges are dismissed, and now are dismissed with prejudice. So they can't be brought back because the district attorney's office failed to appeal it. And that brings us to the main question here. In a case where there has not been justice, we still have the main actors running around Atlanta and the state of Georgia acting like they have provided justice for families who have been affected by police brutality when they have not. And so what I want to achieve is to make sure that families like Jimmy's families get a audience, get a platform, have a real conversation. Because one of the things we really didn't talk about was the attempt to really dehumanize Jimmy from the very beginning, trying to say he was an armed robber, trying to say he was a menace, trying to say that the federal task force had this individual cornered and he was a threat, when none of that was true. And the evidence showed it was not true. As his father just said, even in federal court, it showed that, one, he was not armed. Two, he was given conflicting statements of how to come out, either with his hands up or don't move. And then ultimately, of the 5 police officers that were in there, only one of them shot him, and shot him one time right under the eye. So if he was such a threat, if he was such a menace to society, why was there no gun found? Why didn't the other officers fire? Why did it take almost 5 years for the case to matriculate through Fulton County and then federal court? And why did the person who was in charge of the police department and the person who was in charge of hiring that person all have new jobs, and pretending like Jimmy Atchison didn't happen?
Yeah.
That's the question you got to ask yourself.
And then we didn't add Song Kim was in charge of the federal task force. He was in charge of briefing the officers, and one of the briefings at the briefing, he told officers that according to a couple of officers, he told according to the Fulton County District Attorney, the Public Integrity Unit report, he told them that my son always had a history brutality cases against police officers, and they found out that was a lie. And it was August 2018, and my son, it was a misdemeanor act, and a said accuser did not get harmed, hurt, and that's what he said. At the briefing, he told him that my son was. This according to the Public Integrity Unit. He told him that my son was dangerous, and he might be carrying a gun. It's like he was setting it up. And during the briefing, also, for the Integrity Unit stated that Song Kim, he briefed out. He was being told that if this subject became barricaded, call SWAT or call a supervisor.
Somebody with some sort of de-escalation skills, because clearly he didn't have any.
He wasn't supposed to handle himself, and it's right there, the Public Integrity Unit report. How SWAT, and yet still he went against. He always have. He over aggressive and disobeying orders. That's once again because he took matters into his very own hand and placed himself above the law and became my son Jimmy Atchison judge and his execution.
And it's interesting you say that, because the thought I was just having when we talk about these cases, I like to point out, when we talked about Breonna Taylor, I said the same thing. The way they criminalize the victim is disgusting, right? So I'm not taking away from that, but let's just say in the event that that person was indeed guilty of that crime they were accused of, it's not something that was punishable by death.
No.
Even if he had done whatever they said he did, it's not punishable by death. So why was he given a death sentence, and given a death sentence without due process? No trial, like you said, no court date for him, only after the fact, once he was already gone. He didn't get the chance to tell his own side of the story. And in this country, you are supposed to get the chance to tell your own side of the story. And I personally hear a lot of people getting caught up in the, well, he did this, well, he did that, well, he did this. Well, you are supposed to get your day in court. And when we're getting killed and not getting our day in court, that is a problem, regardless of what they were accused of. I don't care if they were a criminal. I don't care. There are people who have actually committed multiple murders that get their day in court. Not to compare him to a murderer, but I'm saying that if somebody can do something that extreme, then what sounds to me like a petty crime he was accused of, why was he not afforded his day in court? And I just want to take the time to make sure we're, you know what I mean, like reining that back in and grounding ourselves and reminding the listeners too, don't get caught up in all that noise that they create, because that noise is intentional. They want to take away your empathy for that person. They want to dehumanize them.
Yeah, and the main thing people need to understand is the rule of law still applies. You know, a person's not a criminal until they've been convicted of a crime. And in all of these allegations, no one has been convicted of a crime. If you look at what they accused Jimmy of doing, at very best, it is theft by receiving a phone, because the witness came forward and said she gave him the phone. He just didn't return it. So that's not robbery. There was never a gun used. He never took it from her.
Non-violent.
None of that. So if anything, it's theft by receiving at best. But as you stated, and I will state this unequivocally, in the state of Georgia, theft of a cell phone is not punishable by death. And what really angers me as an officer of the court is the executive branch, which would be the governor, the mayor, the president, are acting like there's not a co-equal branch called the judiciary that's supposed to make those determinations. Law enforcement, which falls under the executive branch, does not make the decisions that the judiciary makes. And so that's why it's so frustrating for attorneys like myself and activists and families to see that there seems to be this partition put up and you never get to the judiciary. You get killed on the side of the road, or in Breonna Taylor's case, you get killed in your own apartment, or in Jimmy Atchison's case, you get killed in the candy lady's closet. And now they're pretending like this did not happen, or, oh, he was this really bad, heinous criminal, even though he hadn't been convicted of any of this stuff and didn't get his day in court. So I think that's where we as concerned citizens and voters and ultimately the jury have to push back on this crap narrative. And that's what it is, a crap narrative, because it has not been tested through the vehicle of trial, through the vehicle of cross-examination, through witness testimony, through exhibits, and all these things that need to happen. But what I want to kind of wrap this up with is, Jimmy, where does this case go from here? I know that you have been so vocal for other families, but how can people still help your family to achieve some semblance of accountability for your son?
Well, besides prayer, because I really believe in prayer. I mean, you continue his name. He continue to speak his name. I'll never be silent. And because when I see people still speaking his name, and I still see people showing they still care, it gives me energy. It gives me much needed energy, and we just have to keep on, and that I had to keep on. You know, like I said, I just can't stop. I feel like a failure. People say what about the mothers, but what about what the fathers go through? You know, they say a man ain't supposed to cry, and I don't know who told that lie, but my heart cries every day, knowing that I got accountability for my one son, Curtis Jordan, and I fought the same way. Went to the neighborhood in Southwest Atlanta. I fought the very same way that I'm fighting now. And people started coming forward, and two guys got life sentences. They killed my son. And knowing that I you know, and that I feel like it half done, you know, because I holler in this, look in the sky, and I go to the graves and I talk to, you know, I know my son, I talk to him, and I like, you know, I got to do something else got to happen, you know, to keep his name out there, to keep people, so I know I can just continue to fight, to try to help, to try to help awaken and save lives of other people. And which brings me to this subject right here is, when I be out there on the street with the signs and I see ladies coming out there with 3 and 4 sons, and I was like, "Can I get a flyer about my son?" They should be good. I was like, "Don't you know black children are getting killed by police?" When you look at 12-year-old Leland Barkins and 7-year-old Sarah Ability, when police shot in their car up in in Pennsylvania, shot in their car thinking that they car some people that shot were coming from the car, which was a lie. So they don't take us serious. And then when I be out there and it hurts, and I remember everything that hurts me when I be out there, when I've been on the steps of the Capitol, when I be in Midtown, or when I be in Buckhead, and I see black people walking by me, and I see black people walking by me and ignore me, and when I see it's like I see shame in their faces. I see embarrassment in some of their faces. I see resentment. I even see resentment, like, "Man, what you doing?" Like I'm not supposed to fight for my son, and it hurts me. And I was like, "Damn, we done been brainwashed that bad." And we just have to hold ourselves accountable, to hold others accountable, because we're too silent, and freedom isn't free, and we just have to continue to fight, and agree. So that's all I just say. People have to just continue to just say his name. Anything you can find, any type of detail, you can find any type of event. I still go out there. I don't go out there as much as any type of I'm gonna say event, any type of thing that rallies or anything. Please come support us. If you just drive by and blow the horn, and I have to thank Greg, and I have to thank Dante, and I have to thank activists because in the community, because a lot of people that's been with us. Greg's been with us since day one. And my message for the community is, when it comes to police brutality, the first story isn't the whole story, but it's the story that everybody remembers. So check out all the detail, and you can't see the big picture if you're stuck inside the frame. Police set the narrative, media spreads the narrative, and families like my family, we suffer and struggle mentally, physically, and emotionally for years, fighting for years by trying to set straight the lies that took only minutes to write. And so that's why I just said we just got my prayers are with the families, and my prayers are just keep fighting and don't give up, even if you have to be at your own pace, and don't mess around and get caught up in being in that dark place, because I've seen so many families that's barely holding on mentally, and I've seen them get in that dark place, and some of them ain't been able to come out of that dark place.
Well, we appreciate you for staying in the fight. I can attest that you are a warrior in this fight. We are going to keep saying his name and continue to lift up Jimmy Atchison, and never forget that we are going to get justice for Jimmy. But I just appreciate you, Jimmy, for just your resilience and continuing to fight. One other thing that I just want to take a personal privilege to say that people can do to lift up the name of Jimmy Atchison. Today early voting started in Georgia. And so I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I will say this: if you don't value Black lives, and so y'all take that however you want. Y'all can photo, record, say whatever, because I say it in public and I say it in private.
Say it again, Greg.
Listen, if you don't value Black life, you shouldn't get Black votes. And what I'm noticing here over and over and over again is certain elected officials think people have short memories.
Ain't it crazy how they try to rebrand and come back?
Yeah, we had to force a certain individual to take accountability, not just for Jimmy's case, but for Deatrix's case, and for Rayshard's case, and for Sequoia Turner's case. And that's why they were one term. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Y'all record it, send it wherever you need to send it. But know this: Black folks, do your research. And with that, guys, I'm going to turn it over to my able co-host, because I think that's all I got.
And let me say this before you turn over. Thank you so much for having me. And it's important for people to support podcasts and revolt and because too many times, mainstream media they're gonna report what they want to report, and because we know who they're controlled by, and so without being edited, and that's what we need, and so people need to start supporting these Black podcasts, and they really do. So we need to do more. We need to do more support, and I thank you so much for having me, and I thank you so much just for being able to talk to get these other families, and so we need the truth. The truth needs to get out there. The truth can't stay in the dark, but it's up to us,
Thank you. We appreciate you so much for being here this evening. Now, we can't fix what your family's going through, but I can commend you for fighting. I can tell you that we see you, and there's a lot of people that see you, even if we're not there in person every day. There's a lot of people who know Jimmy and his story, and we're going to continue to support you through his fight.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank y'all for having me.
We appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Justice for the series. This is the Justice for Jimmy Atchison episode. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to like, comment, and share so that more people can know the truth about what happened to Jimmy Atchison in 2019 and the fight that continues to go on for justice for his family and justice for Jimmy. And I want y'all to make sure that if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the podcast. We are streaming on all networks that you can get your podcasts. That's Apple and Google and all over Spotify. But also, the ones that are watching here on YouTube, please share. Please make sure you click that subscribe button, and please make sure a friend of yours hears about Justice for the series. We're growing, y'all, and we're going to continue to bring the truth unedited and unfiltered because this is Justice for the series.
Every headline fades. Every news cycle moves on. For the families, it never ends. And the fight for accountability continues. This is not about clicks. This is not about controversy. This is about the truth. The names that deserves justice. We are reopening and examining the files and the facts. Nothing more and nothing less. We're going to ask questions that people dare to ask. Because justice delayed does not mean justice denied.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Can't fail me.
This is Justice for